and that's for a reason. It's supposed to be chunky. But if it starts becoming like soil, that's really bad, because what happens is soil and that texture, it gets gummy, it holds water, and it holds water against the roots of the plant, which is not good, because these roots are actually incapable of what they call transpiring or letting out water. It doesn't evaporate, it just kind of rots it. So you want to make sure to always check your orchid bark, and if it's starting to get kind of like soil-like, it's time to change it. Here's something else you want to see. If you have any mushrooms growing, which is common, I don't know if we have any, I saw some yesterday here, that's also a bad sign, because that's fungus, not good for your orchid. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the physiology of this. Okay, this is an expired but not dead orchid, Phalaenopsis. It stopped blooming. I think it's got kind of a very kind of a dry end here. This one too. So I'm going to do a little cutting before I do my repotting. Very important that you have very clean pruners, because this is living tissue and you don't want to introduce any pathogens. So you've got this long stem. You have a choice. You can either cut it to the bottom, or you can cut it maybe above the last node that shows some life. And this is kind of green here. But I think that I prefer to cut it down as low as possible and be very careful that you don't cut into this tissue. So I'm going to cut this down. And what is going to happen is, now that I repot it, it's going to give the opportunity for this orchid to reestablish the roots in its new media, and that's a really good thing. It needs time to have really strong roots and also to grow leaves, so that ultimately it'll give you a beautiful flower spike. If you're patient, you can actually have more beautiful blooms next year than this year. Okay, so you want to learn how to do it? Here we go. First of all, take a look at all of these roots. They're sticking out of the pot. That's okay. They're supposed to stick out. These are aerial roots. In nature, you know, the orchid is not even planted. It's just hanging on a tree. And so these are the roots that they grab all of the moisture from the air and they bring it into the plant. I want to show you something interesting. You see this root here, the aerial root? It looks nice and thick. Well, actually, it's only a covering. This covers the actual root. Let me bring this down. Look at this. I'm going to peel this off. You see this, guys? The root is inside of the cover, and the covering is a velamen. This has a very specific job in the life of the orchid. The velamen is actually transparent color, and it brings in water. It draws water in. But here's the crutch, guys. Once the water enters here and goes into the root, it does not evaporate. That means if you're watering this and the water is penetrating, you're overwatering, you're going to rot out your root. Does that make sense? I want you to understand why things happen and why I'm going to tell you don't use regular potting soil. Use what? Because potting soil holds water, it'll draw it in through the velamen, go into that root and rot it. But this is chunky and porous. When water goes through this, it just drains through. You understand? So then that makes it a much better environment for your roots. So here we go. What is okay, what's not okay? Number one, take a look at these leaves. They're yellow, they're floppy, they don't even have any density in them. They're very dry. So the way I like to cut these off is I will take this and I will cut it in half. And there's a reason for that. These leaves, okay, they actually wrap around the whole stalk. If I cut it here, I'm still leaving tissue around here. But if I do that, then I can take it off of this side, you see? And I'm gonna wrap and remove it from that side. So I would, before repotting it, remove some of these leaves that are not doing well. And actually the bottom ones, the bottom leaves are the oldest leaves, because as the Phalaenopsis grows, these leaves and new leaves will emerge here, okay? So I got rid of those, and now I'm going to cut off some of this velamen that is very dry and crunchy. It may be protecting the roots, but it's probably not drawing any more water in, so it's just dead weight. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those off, just like this. Oh, here's an interesting thing. Look how the velamen is really, really dry here, but it's attached to a very succulent root. So I'm going to cut it just short of that area, okay? Like this. So I'm just cleaning it up. And notice the roots that are coming out, they're already dead too. I'm taking those down. Okay, now really important, if you've got a really tight fit, you want to gently push against your cup. Hopefully it's not like a ceramic, because you won't be able to do it, you'll have to break it. That's why I like to use some plastic translucent cups. So I'm gently prying it loose. Okay, it's coming out. Great, look at this. Actually, there are some good looking roots here. I've got some dry ones, but they are in good shape. First thing I want to do is remove all of the soil gently. And I'm calling it soil because it looks like soil at this point. It's broken down. And you want to release your roots. Now, if you did find any type of spore or fungus in here or mushroom, what you want to do is take this over to the sink and wash the roots really, really well. And then what I would do is I would get a bottle, fill it with 3% hydrogen peroxide, and then after washing this, I would spray it. And that is an antifungal. Okay, so now, it's breathing again. And you can see, it's got this aerial root sticking out. And all of these were inside. Now, this is an important thing to notice, guys. Now that I'm going to repot it, we're going to make sure that this stays sticking out just the way it was before, because this aerial root has already acclimated to being in the open air, and it is functioning and drawing air in. If I put this inside while this is acclimating to its new media, it's going to be a lot of work for this. Let's leave it outside. So this is nice and clean. Let me just take a few other dead ones off, just like that. And then what you want to do, you can either put it in the same size cup if this will fit snugly, which I think it will. But let me show you something. You could use the same size cup, or you want to go just one size bigger. Here's one that is just a little bit bigger. You never want to go two sizes up, okay? Just the next size. But this is going to work. So here's how you redo it. Got your cup. Go ahead and put a little bit of the orchid bark in there. Just have a base. And then now I'm going to very carefully bring, and this is dead, I'm going to bring and gently nest this inside of our cup. You notice how I'm keeping this outside? And you want this to sit in the cup at about the same height that it was before. You see how the leaves, they're not down here, they're up here. Okay, so then now, very important, take your bark and take your time. Put a little bit inside and tap it. The reason for this is you want to make sure that you get bark inside all of this arterial, highway. You want to make sure that it's nice and packed. Just like this. If you want, you can even use, like a little stake, just kind of to bring it in there. And again, very gentle, because you don't want to wreck these roots. So I'm packing it in. This one has a little bit of sphagnum moss. That's okay. Guys, sometimes your orchid, your Phalaenopsis, will come and it's packed in this right here, the sphagnum moss. Not my favorite. It's good for a very, very young plant. They usually grow in this, but this holds so much water that if you're not careful, you're going to drown your orchid if you overwater it. It doesn't drain as well as the bark. So here we go. Tap, tap, tap. And then I'm going to give this a really good drink of water and let it completely drain before I put it down or before I even set it in a covered pot. And take a look at this. You notice something about these two pots that are in common? They both have holes. This has tiny little holes, and so does this. And that's because this is an orchid pot. It allows air in, it allows light in, and believe it or not, these roots are photosynthetic. They're processing energy. And that's just what makes these orchids so unique. So then you would put it in after watering. And something you want to notice, why I like these pots? Because you can see the roots, right? Something to note, when the roots look nice and green, that means it's well hydrated. If they start to look gray, and you can just pick it up and look, if they start to look gray, that means you need to give it water. So do not over